I have always loved the energy around this time of year. There's something really magical about the moment when we as a society collectively decide to take a moment and reflect upon the previous 12 months before turning the metaphorical page and starting fresh in the new year. For many of us, this time of year means making plans for self-improvement in one or more area of our lives. This can be from our academics, to our careers, and many times, our mental health. Now, over the last 6 months or so, I have made a conscious decision to slow down and lead a more mindful and intentional lifestyle. One of the ways that I've succeeded in doing this is by bullet journaling. In 2020, bullet journaling provided me with an outlet where I could center myself and focus on what was truly important in my life. So if slow and intentional living is something that you have added to your list of resolutions for 2021, I'm going to show you my minimal bullet journaling setup for mindfulness and intentional living. Now, I just wanted to say right off the bat, you do not have to be an artist to start bullet journaling. You'll see throughout this process that I made several mistakes, and to me that was just kind of inevitable. But if you're looking for a way to make a polished bullet journal that looks nice and aesthetic, I'm going to show you a trick at the very end to succeed in doing that. So the first spread that I set up in my 2021 bullet journal was my year at a glance. Now this spread is one that I feel like is kind of a quintessential part of everyone's bullet journaling setup, but it's also one that's quite difficult to get together. I'm gonna be honest, guys, this is my third attempt in setting up this spread, and it was quite time consuming and just really easy for me to get off when numbering the calendar itself. So if that's not something that you're especially excited to create, it's not something that's required for any bullet journal by any means. But if you did want to add that to your 2021 bullet journal, I will say it is a great way to practice unplugging from the world for a little while also slowing down and simply focusing on one task at a time. Now, if you're looking for my advice on how to successfully set up this spread in your 2021 bullet journal, I would highly suggest that you triple check how many days are in each month, as well as what day of the week each month starts and stops on. I found that doing this was super helpful for me to stay on track while numbering because I already had an idea of what each day was supposed to be numbered with. Then, just as an extra precaution, you can always start off by numbering the calendar in pencil. And then, once you're finished and you know for sure that you didn't make any mistakes or errors while you were numbering the calendar initially, you can go back and finish it with pen just to make it look polished and complete. So once I finished with all of that and made 100% sure that I didn't have any errors in the numbering on my calendar, I went ahead and labeled that page, then moved on to my second spread. Now, in my opinion, one of the key tenets of intentional living is showing gratitude for the things that we already have versus romanticizing the things that we don't. This second spread is a log to hold me accountable for showing gratitude for the blessings that I have in my life versus lusting after the things that I don't have and likely don't even need. So the setup for this spread was really very simple. It was basically just a matter of me numbering lines 1 through 25 and then titling the top of the page as Gratitude Log. The intention behind this, of course, was for me to have a space to come back to periodically throughout the year and leave notes of things that I was truly thankful for. Now, if you were to ask me why I decided to start practicing mindfulness and leading a slow living lifestyle, my answer would be to improve my mental health. Pretty much for the entirety of my adult life, I've had struggles with my mental health, specifically in the area of anxiety. Now, if it wasn't obvious, our society places such a high importance on getting things done as quickly as possible and doing as many things as we can as fast as we can. So it's not surprising that so many of us get carried away in living this fast-paced lifestyle and in the process struggle with anxiety and low self-esteem when we can't keep up. With that in mind, rejecting those standards really has made such a huge difference when it comes to improving my mental and physical well-being. And one of the ways that I've held myself accountable in rejecting those standards is just keeping track of how I feel on a day-to-day basis. For that reason, I thought it would be a great idea to just add a mental health tracker to my 2021 bullet journal, just so that I had a way of being able to periodically check in with myself and make sure that I'm not rushing through my day-to-day life. Now, the setup of this spread was a little bit more complicated, but to sum things up, I basically just created a grid where the y-axis corresponded with the day and the x-axis corresponded with the month. From there, I went down the side of the page and created a key where I labeled different emotions with different colors, and from there, the intention was basically for me to be able to come back on a daily basis and color the blocks that corresponded with each date in the color that I felt for that day. Now, the next two spreads in my 2021 bullet journal are the ones that I'm probably the most excited to share with you guys. This first one is my 25 before 25 spread. In 2021, I'm going to be turning 25, and I thought it would be fun for me to make a list of 25 things that I wanted to do before I turned a quarter of a century old. That feels disgusting to say out loud, oh my gosh. Now, I haven't actually sat down and written out every single thing that I wanted to do before I turned 25 in June. However, as an example, I know one thing for sure is going to be on this list, and that is learning how to make sushi. I'm not a very good cook, but we'll see how it goes, just because I feel like I need to learn how to make one decent meal before I turn 25. Now, the second and my two favorites within my 2021 bullet journal is my book log. I'm an avid reader, so it's probably not surprising to anybody who knows me even slightly that this would be my favorite spread within my 2021 bullet journal as a whole. But I'm really excited about it because it's just a place that I can come back to on a regular basis and keep a log of all of the books that I'm currently reading, as well as create a list of the books that I want to read in the future. Basically, what I did to set up this spread is create a 6-shelf bookcase where on the first 5 shelves I left blank books that I could go back to and write in the titles of the books that I read throughout 2021. Then at the shelf on the bottom, I just left a blank space where I could go back and leave any notes or thoughts on the books that I'm reading, as well as create a list of books that I'd like to read in the future. Now recently I've been getting into dark academia books, and I've actually just ordered The Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. Unfortunately, the book has not been delivered to my house yet, so I haven't had a chance to dive into this one, but rest assured it will be the first that I add to this book log. Now, all of the spreads that I've used up until this point are ones that I've intended to use throughout the entire year. However, I usually like to set up my bullet journals in 2 different sections, where I have one section for the entire year and another section that is divided into 12 parts for each month. So our remaining spreads are the monthly spreads, and we are going to be focusing our lens on January. So the first spread that I have for the month of January is my Get on Track spread. This spread is basically another calendar setup where I have listed out different mindful activities as well as healthy habits that I want to make sure I stay on top of during the month. Now, these activities range anywhere from yoga to meditation to even simply just eating breakfast in the morning, and it's basically just a way for me to ensure that I'm taking the time to care for both my body and soul. So the setup for the spread was pretty similar to my year at a glance spread, except it wasn't as time consuming because I didn't have to worry about making sure each number corresponded with the correct day. Basically, all I really needed to worry about was making sure I didn't skip a number in between 1 and 31, and from there I was golden. Then, once I was finished labeling each individual calendar, I went back and labeled each one with a separate activity that I was going to be focusing on this month. And just to clarify, the activities that I have listed here on this spread are pretty typical from month to month. Usually, for each month in the year, I have the same activities on my Get on Track spread. Then really quickly, just as an example of how it works, I went ahead and highlighted 2 of the things that I did on January 1st, just as an example of how this spread is supposed to function. Now, in my opinion, another great habit to keep when you're trying to be a little bit more mindful is just the simple act of writing. Now, obviously, this entire journal is meant to be a place that we come back to on a daily, weekly, and monthly basis, and write in accordance to the prompts that we have set up for ourselves. However, I do find that it is important, at least in my everyday life, to have a space that I can come back to and write in without any sort of a prompt, just to have an extra space that I can be creative in. Now again, this spread was one of the ones that was really easy to set up. Basically, all I really needed to do was divide the page into 3 separate sections, where the top and largest section was a place that didn't have a prompt and I could just write in it with whatever that I needed to write, and then the bottom 2 smaller sections were a place for me to write my frustrations as well as my achievements. Then, just to kind of spruce things up, I decided to go ahead and outline the entirety of those sections in washi tape, and I thought that it just kind of added a little extra something to the entire spread. Now guys, something that I feel like is so important for us is to have something that resembles a sleep schedule. I feel like I am not alone in saying that during 2020 and during lockdown specifically, my sleep cycle just got absolutely wrecked. And by that I mean every single week I would have nights where I'd sleep only like 4 to 5 hours, and then other nights I would sleep 12-ish hours, and I just found that having that sort of sleep cycle really kind of messed up the entirety of my day, and it was really hard for me to be intentional throughout my entire week when I wasn't sleeping like I was living with intention. So for that reason, I've decided to add this analog sleep tracker to my 2021 bullet journal on a monthly basis, just so that I can keep track of my sleep in some way, shape, or form. That way, maybe I will have something that looks like a sleep schedule by the end of the year. I'm also hoping that this can be a little bit more helpful for me, because I'm not the kind of person who wants to use a digital sleep tracker while I sleep. During 2020, I really tried to use my Fitbit as a way of tracking my sleep, but I found that I never really wanted to wear it at night just because it felt really restrictive around my wrist, so I'm hoping this will be a good alternative to that. Okay, so moving along to my next spread, I have a very simple list that I'm intending to use as a reflection exercise on a daily basis throughout the month. So what I'm planning for this spread specifically is for me to be able to sit down at the end of each and every day and take time to reflect on everything that happened. And from there, I'll be able to pick out the high point or high points of that day and leave myself a note on exactly what those high points were. From there, I'm hoping that I'll be able to go back to this page at the end of 2021 and really reflect on this year for what it was at its highest points. Okay, so the final 2 spreads that I have in my monthly section of my 2021 bullet journal are kind of a 2-for-1 deal. Kind of like the previous spread, I thought it would be fun for me to create 2 more lists, one where I would be able to just kind of write down the general vibe of the entire day, and then a second one where I was able to write down a lesson that I learned that day. So the first of these 2 is my 1 line a day spread, and it's basically just going to be a spread where I'll be able to reflect on my entire day and write down a few short words of the general vibe of the entirety of the day. I basically just wanted to have a space for me to be able to take a look at my day and reflect on it for what it was, whether that was good, bad, or ugly, and then document it within my 2021 bullet journal. Then the second of these 2 spreads is my 1 lesson a day spread. Obviously, this is going to be where I take a moment at the end of every day and write down a lesson that I learned on that day. From there, after I've written out all of the lessons and just moments that I had within the year on these 2 spreads, I'll be able to go back at the end of 2021 and get a real vibe for how my year went as a whole. Then, like I said at the beginning, I did just have a quick trick for my perfectionists out there to make sure that your 2021 bullet journal looks as complete and pristine as possible when you're done setting it up. Now, this might seem kind of obvious, but I can't stress enough how much of a difference it made for me to take a quick moment and go back over all of the words that I wrote in my 2021 bullet journal. Now, this simple process really just allowed me to take a moment and look at all of the titles that I left within my 2021 bullet journal, and smooth out any rough edges that I noticed, and make sure none of the lines were crooked because I do tend to write in a crooked fashion sometimes. Well guys, there you have it. This was just my very basic, minimal bullet journaling setup for my 2021 bullet journal. Overall, I'm really excited with how it turned out, and hopefully it inspired you to create a bullet journal of your own this year. If it did, make sure you give this video a like and hit the subscribe button so you're notified every single time that I upload. But other than that, I hope you guys have a fantastic rest of your week, and I will see you guys in the next one.